There are in India today 100,000 lorry drivers and trucks and lorry drivers who take goods all over the country. Now that, I'm told, and I stand corrected, is one of the major causes of the spread throughout India of HIV. They go to a town, they get infected, then they go home, and then they infect their wives, etc., etc., etc. My little thing would be that no truck or lorry driver is given a driving license for more than 1 year. And he's only issued a driving license if he has a blood test and shown that he is HIV negative. Do that every year. If I was in the government, I would do that on a war footing immediately.
On a war?
War footing.
We don't have adequate number of nursing staff to look after such a large number of patients. So because the family members are there, then they look after their patient. So if a patient is demented or if the patient is having a persistent diarrhea, so naturally we get help from the family members, and the family members are also trained in giving the health care, observing the universal precaution. So we start the training of home-based care here itself. There are many young women, they are the innocent victims of this disease. Because HIV in the initial stages remains asymptomatic. Many of these people are not aware, and because of their ignorance they have indulged into this multi-partner sex, or most of them so to say go to the commercial sex workers. They are unaware that they are HIV infected. They get married and then the infection is passed on to the wives. And I am getting an increasing number of innocent women who are HIV infected, and the source of infection is their own husband.
Yeah.
And
So
they are
many
passing on this infection to their children.
So the family that is helping here can sometimes be infected themselves.
Yeah, but at least when the husband is in an advanced stage, the wife is in the early stages. The wife looks after the husband. But when the wife is really sick, she gets a very limited support from her family. That is the tragedy. He is a case of meningitis, complaining of persistent headache.
Three 3,500 new cases per day. And India will have 35 million HIV positive by the year 2005. Look, to me, it's an emergency. Mm-hmm. And the sooner the Indian government wakes up and realizes that, something can be done.
Als je een epidemie wil bestrijden, zoals die van
If you're trying to fight an epidemic like HIV/AIDS today,
dan kom je er dus ook
you
niet
don't
als
do
je
it by
alle pillen
loading
van
a
de wereld, en
plane
ik
with
heb
all
dat al
the
eens vaker
pills in the
gezegd,
world
met een sproeivliegtuig over
and
de
just
derde
emptying
wereld
them
uitstort.
over the third
Wat
world.
je nodig hebt is een stukje basale
What you need is a
infrastructuur.
basic
Als je
health
die infrastructuur
infrastructure.
niet hebt,
If you
en als je
don't
de
have
mensen
that,
die vaak niet kunnen
you
lezen,
aren't going
die
to
dus niet
provide
weten
any
wat er
help
op
for
een
HIV
bijslager staat,
sufferers.
die niet kunnen lezen
They are mostly
hoe zo'n
illiterate,
geneesmiddel
can't
moet
read the
worden
information on the
toegepast,
leaflets
waar
and the
geen,
drugs packets,
medewerkers zijn
and
in
have
de
to cope
gezondheidszorg
without a
die ermee kunnen
healthcare system
bijdragen dat die
that
mensen
can
worden
tell them about the
opgevoed,
disease they
weten wat
have
het
and the
ziektebeeld
possible
betekent,
cures for them.
weten hoe ze hun geneesmiddelen moeten
If you
gebruiken.
don't have any
Als
of
je dat
this,
soort
you
dingen
just
allemaal
can't
niet
fight the
hebt, kun je
epidemic.
die epidemie inderdaad niet bestrijden.
The global pharmaceutical companies are at war, and the battlefield is AIDS. The war began when the Indian drugs company CILPA started producing generic medicines for HIV/AIDS sufferers in India. There's nothing illegal in this. Western drugs are too expensive for many Indians. That's why the Indian government has allowed Indian drug producers to make generic copies of these drugs. bypassing patents on them in an effort to ensure a viable healthcare system.
This is a drug called stavudine, which is used for against AIDS. And this is a new method of making it, which we've developed in-house. What we do, we spend about, maybe in a year, $250,000 to $300,000 for scientific journals and books, etc. each year. As you can see the pile of journals on the right here. So we get about maybe 300 to 400 journals, scientific journals, a month. All the journals that CILPA subscribes to first comes to me, because that's my hobby. I think I probably read about 400 journals in a month. Or scan. I don't read, I scan. And I pick up whatever is important. And on the basis of that, we develop our own research and development program. And then I give it to my boys at various research centers that can you do this and can you do that. They also suggest.
Can you find out how to make this drug?
Can we find out how to make it?
That has been developed by someone else.
By someone else.
Besides CILPA, there are 25,000 other companies producing generic drugs in India. CILPA is one of the biggest. It's produced around 80 different drugs. It manufactures an anti-anthrax drug, for which Bayer owns the patent, a variant of Viagra, where the patent belongs to Pfizer, and a whole series of antiretroviral drugs for HIV/AIDS sufferers, whose patents are owned by Bristol Myers Squibb and GlaxoSmithKline.
We're talking about much bigger issues than whether this constitutes theft or not. I care about the principle that patents are vital to protect the profits of the pharmaceutical industry, so it can go on developing new drugs. I understand that, from a business point of view, Mr. Hamied doesn't respect that. I don't agree with him. Is it theft? In the strict sense, I don't think it is, according to the law. As long as he stays on his territory in India or anywhere else where patents aren't recognized.
See, patent laws are national laws. Please understand. They are not international laws. There's no one international patent law which is common for everybody. The Americans say in atomic energy and nuclear power, no patents will be allowed in America. Why? Because for the Americans, defense for them is a national need. In a country like India today, we Indians say that what are India's national needs? Our national needs, we decided in 1972, and I was party to it. It's two, health and food.
In February 2001, CILPA made headlines around the world when it offered to provide cheap antiretroviral drugs for HIV/AIDS sufferers in South Africa. The multinational drug companies threatened to fight the case in court, but backed down under international pressure. Then they cut the price of their own drugs by up to 90%.
If you have exclusivity and a monopoly, you can charge what you want. Per patient per year, the multinationals, because of their monopoly, were charging $10,000 to $15,000 per patient per year. Until we came forward and said, no, we can give it to you at $350. Then when a damn thing costs $200 or $300, why the hell are you charging $15,000?
Is it not?
Am I the thief or are they the thief? That's the question I'm asking you.
Global pharmaceutical companies claim that drug patents are the only way to ensure they'll be able to go on producing new drugs. Developing new drugs is a long and expensive process. New drugs are often derived from plants, from nature. But not every shot is a hit. It can take as long as 10 years to develop a drug from a plant. And often it goes wrong midway, and there's no guarantee of success. But in spite of this, according to the American Business Weekly Fortune, the pharmaceutical sector has been the most profitable industry over the last 20 years. But how does such a risky business make so much money? The US Congress tried to find out how much it costs to develop new drugs, so they could decide on fair prices. but the pharmaceutical companies use the law to stop them.
Glaxo zou dus inzage geven aan mij bijvoorbeeld aan wat de ontwikkeling van een bepaald medicijn gekost heeft.
Nee,
No,
Glaxo
doesn't do
niet,
that.
zoals geen
No
enkele
other
farmaceutische
pharmaceutical company
industrie
would either.
dit soort gegevens vrijgeeft.
Wat is daarop tegen om die inzage te
What's the
geven?
problem with
Dat
that?
heeft te maken met bedrijfsvoering en hoe dat je de continuïteit van je bedrijf regelt.
It's the way business
Dat
is
zijn
done.
zaken die,
It's sensitive information for our competitors.
concurrentiegevoelig zijn, waar eigenlijk geen enkel bedrijf zich mee bezighoudt door precies aan te
No
geven
company gives
hoe
away
dat,
these kind of figures on costs and
prijsvorming in
pricing.
dat soort zaken en kosten tot stand komen.
Half the drugs for AIDS that are marketed worldwide have not been developed by the people who are marketing the products. They've licensed the products in. They're paying royalty to, like in stavudine, this thing I just showed you. The actual research was done by the United States government. They then give an exclusive license to Bristol Myers Squibb. So the research was not done by Bristol Myers Squibb. It was done by the United States government at Yale University. Well, I wrote a letter to Bristol Myers Squibb in December last year that I'm willing to license your product on payment of royalty. I didn't even get a response from them.
Pharmaceutical companies typically spend twice as much marketing their products as they do on developing them. This is where they excel, at marketing new drugs, not necessarily at research and development.
Do you know, in my 40 years here in CILPA, I have come up with 4 new products. No Indian doctor accepts it. They said, Dr. Hamied, if it is as good as you say it is, then why is it that companies like Pfizer and Glaxo haven't brought it out before you? They don't accept. Here is a product I have here in my hand, candonium iodide injections, approved for marketing in India. What do? Tell me one Japanese drug that has ever become popular. None. I don't have the marketing muscle. So what do? If you look at the world's top 50 drugs, half of them are not invented or researched by the company that is marketing these products. The Japanese invent something, then they have to go with a begging bowl to the big companies. Please take our product for marketing.
Ik denk dat
I'd answer that by saying, look at the way he is marketing drugs in Africa, where he effectively uses the media, including you, to show that he wants to sell his products in Africa. Nothing more, nothing less.
Die erop afgekomen zijn te gebruiken om te laten zien dat hij graag zijn geneesmiddelen wil verkopen in Afrika. Niks meer en niks minder.
Major pharmaceutical companies earn less than 1% of their profits from sales in African countries, and so could easily afford not to enforce their patents in those countries. But CILPA's behaviour makes them nervous.
In de derde wereld gebeurt het heel vaak dat pakjes gekopieerd worden. En dat er pilletjes
in third world countries, you often find that the packaging, the boxes, for drugs have been copied, but inside there are either no drugs at all or very low quality drugs.
De werking heeft ontbreekt of in onvoldoende mate aanwezig is.
We need patents to prevent these kind of practices and guarantee high quality medicines.
Kwalitatief goede geneesmiddelen worden verstrekt in dat kader.
I answered that in the European Commission last year. Please listen to me very, very carefully. All CILPA's factories have been inspected and approved by the US FDA, by the MCA UK, by the German health authorities, by the South African health authorities, by physical inspection by the TGA Australia. The Hungarian FDA has been here. UNICEF have been here. WHO have been. Physical inspection. Our factories are physically inspected and approved.
Yeah, but
let me finish, sir. Do you know not one factory of the multinational companies that are here in India, not one has been inspected or approved because they are not interested in export from here. They are only interested in the local Indian market or maybe the markets where approvals are not required. If any of my products where I compete with the multinationals was not similar to theirs, they would be shouting from the rooftops.
But even if CILPA's organised its affairs well, you cannot say the same thing about the Indian government. While the AIDS epidemic is starting to reach every part of the country, India's health service is not prepared for the consequences. Even a city like Bombay, with 16 million people, has only 8 AIDS specialists.
I'm getting fever again.
Take some medicine.
They don't help.
You will never be better again.
I can only talk about patients attending this hospital. And about 1% of our patients, we could start antiretroviral therapy. And those who are receiving antiretroviral therapy, they are doing very well with the therapy. The survival time has increased. The incidence of opportunistic infections has gone down. But for that, we have to be literally after the patient. We have to continuously counsel them. We have to establish a dialogue with them so that they adhere to the therapy. Otherwise, many times they themselves modify the dosages. They themselves modify their own treatment. In between, they just stop the treatment. And that is where we are fearing a problem of drug-resistant HIV.
Do you have to take 2? How many of the green did they give you?
2. I only take 1.
You mustn't take 2.
Dit, wat u hier ziet, is therapie voor 5
These tablets are antiretroviral therapy for 5
dat al
days.
deze pillen, deze in de verpakking en deze
That means that all these
zullen
pills have to
moeten
be
worden
taken in the
gebruikt
course of 5
in
days.
5 dagen tijd. Dat betekent dat mensen moeten weten hoe ze gebruiken en dat mensen ook moeten weten dat als ze er een
That
aantal niet
means
van
the patient
gebruiken,
has to know how to
dat ze alleen
take
maar
them,
dit opeten,
and understand that if they
dat de
don't
kans
take them
dat er dan
all,
resistentie
there's a
gaat
real
ontstaan,
danger that the
dus dat
virus
het
will
middel niet
become
meer
resistant.
werkt tegen het virus,
Then they
erg
won't
groot
work
is.
anymore.
Dat betekent dus dat als je het geven van een licentie om alleen maar pillen te laten produceren,
So, when you
als
say
een
it's a
hoger
good
doel
thing,
ziet, je verkeerd bezig bent.
just to give a
Wat je moet
company
doen,
in a third
is
world
ervoor
country the
zorgen
license to
dat die
produce
pillen
these
kunnen
drugs,
worden beschikbaar gesteld
you're making a
aan
big mistake.
zorgverleners in de derde wereldlanden op een zodanige manier dat ze goed worden gebruikt. En dat
We
doe je
should
niet
only
door alleen
provide
maar een licentie te
manufacturing
verlenen.
licenses
Dat doe je door een licentie
to
te
drug
verlenen
companies that
aan
can
een
help
firma
build
die
up
er
an
ook mee
infrastructure.
bijdraagt dat die infrastructuur ook goed wordt mee neergezet en dat die pillen op
Otherwise,
de
the
juiste
drugs you
manier
see
worden
here
gebruikt.
will be
En
useless in a
anders
couple of
is wat u
years.
hier ziet over een aantal jaren absoluut waardeloos geworden voor de behandeling van HIV en AIDS.
Indian doctors or general practitioners are under no obligation to treat AIDS patients. Usually, out of fear of the disease, they send them to government hospitals that do treat them. But many patients, particularly the poor, don't even make it that far. Because they don't have the money to go to a doctor to begin with, they often go straight to the pharmacist for drugs.
I have seen quite a few prescriptions which show inadvertent use of the drugs. There are absolutely irrational combinations. There are suboptimal dosages which have been used. The duration varies from 7 days to maybe 3 or 4 months. If the prescriptions or drug therapy is started haphazardly like this, very soon we will have a drug-resistant HIV epidemic here in India. That worries me most.
So introducing a cheap drug might lead to the destruction of the drug itself?
Probably yes. See, we have already burnt our fingers with tuberculosis. Now we are facing a big problem with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And that is mainly because these patients, even when the drugs were given free of cost, did not continue the therapy for the specified period of time, that is 6 months to 9 months. When we talk about HIV disease, the therapy has to be continued for years together.
But isn't it a bit your responsibility as a drug maker to come up with a drug at the right time?
It is my responsibility. That's why I'm coming out with these drugs.
But it's too early. There's no infrastructure.
That's not why. Among my doctors, there is an infrastructure. CILPA has today 1,800 what are called sales representatives, executives that go around meeting doctors. We cater to over 200,000 doctors in India. And at least my group of doctors, totaling over 200,000, are being educated virtually on a daily basis on AIDS.
Yeah.
So I'm doing my service. Let others do their bit.
Maar als je minder geld
if you don't need to spend so much on drugs, haven't you got more to spend on infrastructure?
Ik denk dat
I think
dat
that's
zo is.
correct.
At least you're doing something. I don't like this lack of inertia that we are facing today, that nothing is being done. You get my point?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what bugs me.